I got video showing and everything. Hey, are we live? Do you see me? Am I still visible? My camera's
Yes, you
still
are
on.
still visible.
I'm still
Yep.
visible, and so is Mr. Craig. Craig, how are you? Nice to see you.
Good. How was Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was very thankfully giving. There's a lot of good stuff that we got when my brother came in from London.
Oh,
Everyone
cool.
was all fine and well. Of course, Raquel was out in sunny climes somewhere else, but that's okay. We'll let that slide for today. In the meantime, we don't have too many people onto our live area here in Teams, but for the folks that are out there, if you follow through, well, there'll be some links over here. You can follow through and find your way over here eventually. But anyway, for the folks that are on the stream, welcome anyway, and enjoy the show. Let's go ahead. Let's start up with our presentation right now. I got the subtitles going, but we can keep on going. All right. Our agenda today, we're going to say welcome, which we sort of done. A little bit of the Power Platform news, what's going on in the world, and of course, our main topic is how to host your own hackathon for your organization. Closing questions. I'll probably be the only one here for that one, but that's okay because Mr. Craig's got to leave a little bit early, and whatever we can conclude with. So, real quick
We had
welcome.
36 people register. I don't know why nobody shows up.
Well, that's a good question. I think they guess that they are guessing they're going to see the recording on Teams or something that they're able to get it. Or, what are the other reasons why they don't show up? Well, they're showing their interest, so we'll take that as they're interested at somewhere. They're going to want to see copies of something. Did we share our slides from last time somewhere, Mr. Craig? We should. Put
Yeah,
them on.
I
We
always
always
post
do.
them, and then
Okay, good.
I think
So yep,
Yeah,
no
that'll be
big deal.
available.
I have an explanation.
Yes.
Yes.
So I have this meeting associated with my work team's account. And when I walk away from work, I don't think about work. I try not to. And so today I happen to get a ping from work reminding me about this meeting. And so I'm logged in on my work computer. But for the most part, my non-work life is not associated with my work computer. So a lot of times I don't get the notes until the
notice.
next morning
Uh-oh.
when I get information that the meeting has already happened.
Has already happened. Well, that's interesting. So because we're sort of after hours, there could be folks that are like, "Oh, there was a meeting." So
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to
this
discuss
explain
that coming into.
this will
So
explain
maybe
why
next year we'll do a lunch version.
a lunch version. You know what? That's
Mm.
probably a good
Although
idea.
Diana, you don't sound like you're from around here. So
Well,
where
Where are you at,
located?
Diana?
well, I actually live in Rogers Park, maybe not too far from you all,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm from East Africa.
Ah,
Ah,
okay, great. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
So we were finding out, like, in fact, for a while we were getting mostly folks from literally overseas to show up at our meetings, and that almost explained it because, like, their time zones might have had it where it's available or not available. So at least you're in the neighborhood, though. You're in Rogers Park, where I used to live, also. So
Nice.
but maybe we'll start doing a lunch one after the first of the year because I think this is going to be our last one for this year.
for this year,
Okay.
this
Unless you
is the
want to,
last one for this year, unless we're
unless you
meeting
want to do a
somehow.
New Year's Eve celebration spectacular.
That would be literally the last one. That would be very, very hard to do. So we might actually be the last one for this year. So welcome to the last one of the year. I call it Willow Day because today is Willow's premiere.
Hello.
Willow.
I wonder how many people. That was an old movie, right? That was. Geez.
Yes, it's like move along, Peck. Remember that? Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I remember the middle.
Speaking of the folks over here, Craig, so just quickly introduction of yourself and tell the folks who you are, why you're here, the good old stuff. Some of the folks, our friends here already know, but the folks
I
online
have no
do
idea
not.
why.
Why
I
is
don't
Craig
know
here?
that. I am Craig Janke. I am a senior manager at WM Reply. We are a consulting company that specializes in modern work. So that means we do SharePoint, we do Teams, we do anything Office 365, really. Yammer, and we do Power Platform as it's related to that. And we do some Teams apps and all that kind of good stuff. So anything that lives on the M365 platform, we basically do. I started years ago doing custom development, but ended up in SharePoint about 2011, I think, as a developer admin, and I went to some user groups for .NET, things like that, but I needed to learn how to do SharePoint, and there wasn't really a group that I liked, so I created my own. And then from there, I started doing SharePoint Saturdays because somebody wanted to have one in a group of us wanted to have one in Chicago, so started doing that since 2013, which is now evolved into M365 Chicago, which kind of helps.
Yes.
So then we've been growing up in the SharePoint to SharePoint 2013 to 16 to Office 365 stuff. So SharePoint Online, Power Platform, and then I think it's 3 years ago now, Ralph, we started this user group.
That's correct. Indeed.
Pre-COVID, when we were actually meeting in person and then just streaming it, but
we were hybriding it earlier, before
before
COVID.
anybody else was.
We were hybriding it. The difference was because it was hybrid, the folks that were alive got to have pizza. I mean, good pizza, not just pizza.
Yeah, we'd order pizza
Very
and then
picky.
we would stream it because we were doing it in downtown Chicago and people in the suburbs didn't want to come out and visit us.
Yes.
So they could send virtually. So we were doing the hybrid model long before anybody else was really doing it. So
this is true. In fact, some of the technology that we've been doing back then has been since like everyone's using it like they know it. It's like, yeah, I know. I taught them all they knew, and it's like, well, didn't we do that in the beginning?
Were we doing Skype? Did we start out with the Skype meetings or?
No, we went straight to Teams. By the time Power Platform came out, we were in Teams already.
Yes.
And so when Teams was still young, before Teams took its COVID, I'm going to be better than everyone else turn, we were doing it. This is probably why we didn't get many people online either at the time, because it was in Teams.
We actually did decent. We didn't.
We did.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that we should send this tape to Heather Newman and
I think so.
Say, hey,
Heather, you're watching right now. Follow the transcript. Remember. All right.
So that's
Heather
me.
Newman from
Ralph,
Microsoft.
talk about yourself.
Yes. All right, Mike. I would like to think so. Ralph Rewas with Sagetti, actually where Craig used to be at one time. I'm now there. National Solutions Architect in the corporate group. I'm also an MVP for business apps. That came recently, and part of it was participation here. Thank you very much. Craig helping out with a lot of that stuff as well when he was still with Microsoft. And just basically Power Platform almost all the time. I'm normally a cloud architect is really what I am. I have a talk show called cloudtalkshow.com. You can go there. And of course, it's on YouTube and everything else. We do like a Friday shows every so often with my friend Larry Smithmeyer. So coming in from that world, essentially the developer world, and I've been doing SharePoint since redacted. And actually, since it was around 2003 when it came out, someone said, "Hey, do you know .NET Nuke? Remember that?" It's like, yeah, maybe you can do SharePoint. So they thought I could do SharePoint because of that, and I became the SharePoint guy, basically because I could say the word SharePoint. It's like, oh, look, I like to point out that the AI of PowerPoint that's receiving the voice has called SharePoint with a lowercase p. So there's a bug in the AI. I'm looking at it. Say the word SharePoint. I'm going to say SharePoint again. SharePoint, lowercase p. I'm just curious how I was writing that out. All right, I'm just going to point that out right there. Anyway, so the Power Platform stuff I'm doing a lot of lately because of what I'm doing at Sagetti. Even though I've been doing this for a little bit for the SharePoint side and everything else, that's never been the main thing. It's always been everything but, or like on the side, or like as a Benny of whatever else I was working on. I get to play with this during work and actually get to play a lot of it. In fact, that's what one of these talks are about, the fact that we've been doing quite a few of these, and we're allowed to talk about it now to some extent. At least I figured out where the lines can be drawn, and the community gets to share in our largesse. This is good.
All right, we need to move on.
That's it. Moving on. Let's find out. We only have a couple of folks here, I believe, right now. We got our friend Hal. Hal, are you out there from Arizona? Or out in Arizona?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, how are you? Another MVP.
I'm fine. Yes.
Yes. Well, Hal, what was your MVP specialty, by the way?
Well, it's currently Office Apps and Services. My specialty as it is Outlook.
Is Outlook okay? Just
Yes.
want to give you that promo so that you can maintain your MVP. Just kidding. But I thought that was very interesting. That again, with a lot of folks that are doing Power Platform stuff, uh, they're coming in usually to solve a problem. And it just happens to be one of the tools that add to their true tool set, which is usually the business or something else. All right, we got
Let
Hal
Diana tell us a little bit
Diana.
about
Tell us
yourself.
about yes. Do talk. Do say. You
Oh,
tell.
thank you. I am a Power Platform developer for a company called 3Cloud.
Oh
I
wow.
focus
We've heard of
on
you.
Yes.
okay, and I'm new to the company. Well, I guess I'm not new anymore, but I found out about Microsoft's developer platform about a year and a half ago, and I've been working in it ever since.
Wow.
And yeah, and so I build apps. I use Power Automate and more recently AI Builder. And
Nice.
so I sometimes miss the I forget what it's called, the interface, like Visual Code and
VS Code and
Notes
all that
plus
good
VS
stuff.
plus.
Code.
Yes.
Sometimes I miss that interface. I accidentally see it somewhere, and I'm like, oh my God, it's the interface. But but I've gotten used to the Power Platform, and I really like how quickly I can go from idea to execution and something useful when I compare it to what I used to do in Ruby and Python.
Indeed.
And so I'm really I'm probably here to stay. I don't see myself going back to setting up Python environments anytime soon, but yeah, I'm pretty happy.
You might find yourself, well, this is good because you might find yourself back to Visual Studio Code when you start looking at the ALM tools. And of course, Power Pages, which is apparently was made with developers in mind first, would be made for portals, because the interface to actually build it when you're building essentially web pages, right, would be Visual Studio Code. JavaScripty and all that type of code is
Nice.
coming back. So don't lose those skills. Keep them handy. Maybe that'll be one of our topics in the next couple of months.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I've actually helped build some web resources with JavaScript recently. Actually, I meant to put on my camera. I usually try to put on my camera at least for a little while I'm talking.
There we go. Oh, there you go. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. Um, and so yeah, and so it's been a fun ride, a fun year and a half, and I'm just looking forward to just learning more about the Power Platform, and hearing more about it from people who are much more familiar with it than I
Oh,
am.
that's all right. As they say,
That
welcome,
would be
and we're
Ralph.
going to
That
give
wouldn't be
you.
me.
I get to do, like I said, I play with it all the time, and I'm just really happy to share all we have. You just gave me an idea when we were talking about that with VS
Mhm.
Code. I'm just thinking of some resources we could probably bring in as a guest speaker for exactly that. Just keep an eye out for our topics. They should be interesting and keep you interested. All right.
Thank
Thank
Good
you.
you
job.
so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else on the line other than Raquel, who's our producer today, that is
No, that looks
out of
like
witness
that's it.
protection? That's it for now. Most everyone's attending online later or coming in by later. That's all right. That's fine. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep on going. So let's just go ahead and keep on going over here. All right. Really, again, for the folks that are online, if you're watching the stream, here's potentially how you could join us, like pretty quickly. Here's our official group location. There's like your QR code. You can quickly grab it and find your way there, or pretend to click on the link over here, which of course is not clickable because I'm sharing my desktop, not the PowerPoint. But that's okay. Let's go ahead and continue. But first, the news. News. Craig, would you like to do the news?
Yeah, just a second. Let me see. Oh, so this one actually, Ralph, you could probably do because you're pretty good at it. But,
Go ahead.
some
Go ahead. Start
powerful
the news. I'll
platform
add to it if necessary. Go ahead.
tool updates. So when we share out the deck, well, I'll just actually, while we're here, copy that over and paste that in the tool. There we go. If anybody wants to look at that, just some cool updates to actually some of the command line tools in the Power Platform. So some updates to help you create C# classes and APIs and be able to do things That way, be able to code it. So if you want to open it up in Visual Studio Code and be able to do some things like that, authentication with secrets, being able to create solution packs, unpack them, and sync fixes. So if you're doing Power FX formulas and those kind of things, that's all up there. And then let's see, we got some Azure DevOps and GitHub Action updates. So being able to actually do some application installs and a little bit more. We're still waiting for full on. We're still waiting for full on. I can't think of what you call it. But
The
full on
DevOps piece.
DevOps solution.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're close. We're getting close, though. We're getting close. Pipelines and all that coming up.
Yes. Is that coming up soon?
February 23 was the last word we got officially from the open user group. In other words, I'm not giving you an NDA here. I'm giving you a last told to the world. I'm okay to say that they're hoping for February. And I would make a joke because that's my birthday month. It's like, yeah, we're in time for my birthday, and they were all joking. Yeah, Ralph, it's for your birthday, no problem.
That is on time for my birthday too.
Hey, that's right. We share a month. How about it?
Yeah, when was yours? I can't remember.
I'm the 5th.
Oh, yeah.
All right, now everyone knows our birthday, so look out.
Mine's the 19th.
19th.
So I'm later.
All righty, it's all right, no problem.
Oh, and then they're
Meanwhile,
they created a more modern landing page for being able to learn Power Apps. So if you're looking for how to learn it, where you go, where you can find the courses, articles, community, and support stuff, you can go to that page. And it looks nice and neat now, easier to find, easier to navigate, and be able to upskill yourself.
highly recommended. Yeah, the only thing I can add to this is like we remember talking about like will you see VS Code and everything else again? This is where VS Code is my friend. I'm writing those CLI scripts. I'm doing scripting. I'm doing my DevOps back and forth. It's in VS Code. Really, I mean, it's got all the bits I need and the IntelliSense to make it happen. So that's deployment, to do deployments as opposed to actually building the code. Do that in the interface, all fine and well, but at some point it's got to deploy, and it's got to deploy in a nice way that does not piss off the the DevOps managers. Meanwhile, more news.
Ooh. So this one is actually probably something that you should, if you could show it.
Let me. I wish I could show it to you. They have a new application. They bought a company called Minute recently, and there's new process mining capabilities. If you recall, in process advice in Power Automate, everyone will notice as they go down the menus, they'll see something called Process Advisor, and when they click on it, there's some samples to do different things. Now, I have two things about this. The first thing is that because they bought Minute, there's now a client application that does process mining. Process mining means you go and you do stuff. You do a process, it records what you do, and from it, it's going to mine what you're doing and create a process map out of it, as they say. Look at what you're touching, how you're touching it, when you're touching it, all that good stuff. If you do it when you record it, say a bunch of people doing it, it'll come up with best paths, fastest path, lowest path, and allow you to analyze what could be made better as far as an optimization for the process or an optimization for automation. And that's the concept over here. Because they changed that, though, because they changed that, it sort of broke some of my demos that I was doing where I was able to sort of like sell people on the idea. And it was really cool, but they broke it, and I'm trying to get it fixed. But that's one of the things that happened from it. This was the case of like the Power Automate per user's license before. You're supposed to have to be able to make that go to Power Automate trial, but really it's the Power Automate RPA trial. I think that's the part that's not quite clear over here when they tell you which trial to get. You click on the link, it'll show it to you, but on the press release, it just says you need the Power Automate per user license. Not telling you that it's because what is it doing? It's recording your steps, right, on a client on a PC. Because it's doing that, that is Power Automate Desktop. That's the difference between Power Automate Desktop and Power Automate Cloud. Cloud means I can record, but it's basically stuff that's happening in the cloud. In this case, I'm actually recording stuff that's happening on your workstation. So that's the difference over here. It says customizable reports. I saw the interface. It looks really cool. I think that's going to have to be a session to itself once they've cleaned it up, because right now It's a little messy. I tried to use it and it was not so intuitive because I guess let's just say the wedding with Microsoft did not exactly go without a hitch. And I'm
Their
hoping that they
demos look
solve
cool
that.
though.
The demos look great, but I can't even recreate the demos. So I'm like, if I can't do it, then I'm either A, doing something wrong, or there's something that I'm missing that I didn't quite see. And I'm hoping to figure that out soon. In the
And then I didn't
meantime,
see too much for Power Automate in itself, but for Power Automate desktops, they created a new home landing
yes,
page, so it's
right.
actually easier to navigate. License request form, so um, warnings have been introduced, and then actually the most important thing for me is that there's more SharePoint connectors and actions that can be available, like Git files
Yes.
and things like that, which come in handy. And they're also creating better UI elements
The last
to be
two are
more,
the most important, I think.
yeah, so it's a little bit more efficient when it runs. Do you want to
It was
expand
weird,
on that,
yes.
Ralph?
Yeah, so like on the SharePoint connector, which was sort of like it was like a miss. It's like, wait a minute, what's the point? They said, well, you can use the cloud version of it. Well, but I'm trying to interact with my stuff and the cloud version. What you're saying is now I have to kick off a cloud automate in order to touch it, or I have to do something funky on my side to be able to touch it. Why can't I just do it native over here like I do it in the cloud? And that was highly requested from the beginning. It was definitely a miss that they finally filled in. And of course, the good old capture UI elements. There's always been complaints. That's the reason people are trying to use it now, potentially even for testing. All right, and they try to compare it to Selenium or other tools like that. Well, it won't be like that. That's not really its main purpose. But in order for it to even approach that, in order for it to be as at least as good as their competitors in UiPath and all the rest, they're going to need to address those issues with capturing UI elements. And when they say it will be now more efficient, doesn't mean that they've caught up. It just means it's getting better. Yeah. All right. Shall we? Meanwhile, click, 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 click. All right.
Absolutely.
Some notes. I think we're about ready to start over here. You guys
Yeah, it's
ready?
all you now, Ralph. You take care of it.
It's all ready. Okie doke. Let's get going. Really quick over here. Some the hackathon resources are here. There is a quick resource, and I put here the QR code to go get it really fast. To get over to that link, the Microsoft Power Platform Learn resource of it. It is literally one page. Everything you're seeing over here, it's one page. Okay, we're done. Yeah, we can go home and read it all. It's all there in one place. Or is it? Well, it's the fast. If you want to have an introduction to it, or if you wanted to show someone else after this call, instead of making you all watch this thing all over again or forcing others to watch it, come over here. This at least gives the Microsoft is saying this. This is their way of the world over here in one page. It's essentially the I would call it the how do you tell it to your stakeholder quickly elevator pitch version of the what a hackathon is and how to make it work. But today, we're going to take the time in the user group to essentially our adventure today is the workbook. You can get it right now yourself at aka.ms/Power Platform Hackathon Workbook. That's a mouthful. That's what we're going to talk about today. You can go and grab it. It's actually a PowerPoint workbook that you can play and use for yourself. Now, it's interesting. I put a star over there because it is not, you won't find it um, by searching for it. If you search for it, you will not find it. You will be sent here to that link above. You try as you might, you will not. You know where it's located? It's hidden in the adoption workbook, which is a separate workbook. Somewhere deep in there in slide almost 50 something is the link that takes you to this particular workbook. It's the only place you actually see it. It's strange, but it turns out to be the most important thing to make it work for everybody. So I think, again, before we go into that workbook piece, there is perspective. The workbook, again, is Microsoft's point of view on how to get things done as far as the hackathon is concerned. But it's a very specific point of view, and it goes down a very specific path. And as our experience now for the last year and a half of running these things is that there are differences and there are nuances to consider. The first one, the case of, is it a contest? Are there winners or losers? Or is it the idea of product creation? You're having a hackathon. Hackathon, when people think of a thon, the marathon, there's a race. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. But here's the thing. Remember when a marathon, when we have a real marathon, it's the case of last person to the finish line. Hey, they're just as much a winner because they actually finished 2.5 hours of grueling or 4 or 5 hours of grueling running, walking, whatever it is they did to get from one place to the other, and that is an achievement to itself. All right, so think of the that concept over here is like, are you creating something so you can have something, or are you looking for we need winners and losers and everything else? So when you start hearing some of the information as we're going across, keep that in mind, that if we talk about winners and losers, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it's for. Second one, the concept of time. The concept it doesn't mention, it's like the concept of like if the participants are available, if there are experts and support people available, if management themselves are available. If it's a contest and someone is going to vote on it, who will be voting? Is it the peers? Is it management, somebody? Or is it management to be available to say, I need to review this to see if it is uh, something we can bless, an MVP that we can use right away, or everything else. All of these folks being available, they talk about it like obliquely, but not directly. It's almost the thing that says without any of these pieces, there's no point even discussing setting up a hackathon. Next one is the concept of the venue. And I've been asked this even by Microsoft. It's like, well, hey, hackathons, can they be done remote or versus live? What's the best way? When you look at their documentation, it almost feels like, this looks like a better thing to do live than it does to do remote. I mean, will you have everyone's attention when you're doing remotely? Can someone cheat, quote unquote, if you're doing it remotely versus live when everyone's where you can see them and everything else? And maybe people are more motivated because they have pizza and food and other things that are there and other goodies and all that stuff. Well, guess what? The hackathon can happen in any venue. It just has to adjust to whatever it is. Next one, the participant targets themselves. Are you targeting traditional developers? So when you say hackathon and someone's going to hack something or create something, the traditional developers might have an idea. Think of code wars, the better way to code, the better way to come up with something. Citizen developers who just want to use whatever skills they got and just come up with something that's really cool and make something something nice. Sort of like the art the summertime art program, and they want to come up, hey, that's a great thing that you created there. Is that an ashtray? Yes, last week was an ashtray too. The other things like that when they're looking at it, or specific groups could be targeted. For example, it is the accounting group that we're looking at. It is the HR group that we're looking at. We're taking those folks and we're going to make them try to put something together that will create essentially different outputs or outcomes as well. Finally, the training objectives. What's the point of the hackathon? Is the point of the hackathon, remember earlier, to create something that's going to be actually used, or is it used for training? In a lot of cases, there's a dual purpose for a hackathon. The idea is getting people immersed to try something out, for them to get that muscle memory to actually use the things that they're using. So it is a great training tool, but it may not have been the reason for the hackathon. So things to think about. The idea is like, sometimes just doing that means that you have to learn something first before you do it. Are these people who already know what they're doing and they're going to build something? Remember, the traditional developers or even citizen devs that are already experienced? Or are they going to come here because they want to learn something new, a new way of doing it, which means they're going to have at least a lesson beforehand to go? We'll talk about that a little bit or a little bit later. Finally, the incentives. Why come to the hackathon? Why give up your workday or everything or anything else to be here? It could be the carrots. It's like, hey, you're going to get goodies. Your work is going to be better. Your life is going to be better. Whatever, however else you want to put it. Or the sticks that says you must come to this because the boss said so, and we want you to start using this tool because we don't want you spending hours and hours anymore with that other tool or doing that other thing. However you do it makes a big difference in how the hackathon is going to set up. Alrighty. Someone can watch the chat. If there's any questions coming in there, do let me know. But otherwise, let us move on.
Watching.
All right. On to the workbook tour. So it is a workbook, and we're going to go through this. In some cases, we're going to go through it a little fast. We're going to look at it with the Ralph commentaries we're going along to give perspective. So they say, what's inside? The purpose of the deck is to execute the hackathon program within your org. And then they explain what a hackathon is. So they explain it's a collaborative event, brings together different people. Well, maybe not. Remember, I gave you the some of the pre talks over here. In their idea, it's different people coming together to put the solution together. It doesn't have to be. It could be the same type of people coming together to put the solution. It's still a hackathon. It doesn't change that. Participants will brainstorm, collaborate, and develop. Now, this is true. The whole point of the hackathon is that there's going to be either the entire group or groups of within groups are going to essentially come up with an idea or take an idea and build something with it and work together. A hackathon of 2 people is not a hackathon. A hackathon with 5 people, if each individual is doing something separately, is not as effective as when you have teams of folks that are able to work with each other. But you can't have giant teams. Like here's a 20-person team. They're going to hack something. Well, you know what's going to happen? There's 2 people are going to do all the work, and the rest are going to be there eating cake on the side because they're like, yeah, whatever. I'm not feeling it. This is a big deal. All right. Again, the goal is to have a prototype. What they're trying to look over here in a hackathon, as opposed to some of these other pieces, is they want something to be created at the end of the hackathon. Something is going to be built that we can actually look at and consume, right, in some way. Maybe it's an app, maybe it's a form, maybe it's a solution, complete solution, maybe it's a flow, however that is. But the idea of the hackathon is people get together, they build something, and we see that something. All right. Again, it could be building a bunch of different things, but the idea is there's going to be at least one thing or something is going to be built out of it. All right. They talk about it as a fun way to engage a lot of people. Yeah, it's fun, only if it's made fun. Remember, carrot and stick. The objective, of course, is to develop sample apps. It's not meant to create like the app that's going to rule the world. This is not like the reality show where like every week there's going to be judges, and you're going to have folks like Simon telling you, no, I don't feel it. It's not happening. Whether or not you have that stuff, it's not that concept where you're going to expect to have the best of the best coming out of it. The idea is to get folks into that groove of creating stuff and to do it quickly. The low code system allows that to happen, which is the point of this. All right, and of course, teams coming together. The idea, of course, with the hackathon, where you can bring the folks together to make that happen. I think that's a straightforward one. All right, then it starts. This is the stuff where if you have to sell it to somebody. I think we should do a hackathon. Why? What's good about it? The bennies, discover needs and problems. The first one over here, that discover needs and problems, that can be done without a hackathon. But a hackathon is great if you're a great venue for this if you're trying to figure out what am I going to do with this tool. I bought 100 license of this and we don't know what to do. You can use a hackathon to come up with that solution. Frankly, you don't need a hackathon for that. And I'm giving you the route perspective on that one. But otherwise, you can use it to discover a need and problem or discover how to put needs and problems together into something you need to solve. All right. The next one, of course, inspiring employees about how to work with Power Platform. Employees or the staff or everyone else. The concept, again, for a hackathon, if it's a contest or if it's something that's going to give them recognition, you have to have a piece that goes with it. Nice inspiration for the pieces. But I like this one over here. Find your next Power Platform specialists and champions. I actually highlighted that on the list over here, mainly because the idea of the hackathon is when you're bringing groups, and remember, more than 5 people, so you can have more than 5 things. When you're bringing folks together to put this together, the folks that are participants are likely going to be your next super champions and specialists. All right. And even if you're bringing in, like, say, the traditional developers to bring it in, the fact that they're going to participate in this is something to watch. Sometimes it's not what they produce, right? Like in an interview, sometimes you ask a question. It's not about whether a question whether they're getting right or wrong on the answer. It's how they answered the question. Okay. Hey, what was that time? Tell me about a time when you had the biggest problem and then you were trying to do something and Microsoft said after you promised the client you can do it that it can't be done. How did that go? Right. And then they have to come up with something, right? And it didn't matter right or wrong. There's no right or wrong answer. The idea over there was they talk about how they reacted, how they solved it. And that tells you a bit about their character, their problem-solving skills, and everything else. And the idea of the hackathon, the act of doing it, is not like, because otherwise I'd say, here's a problem, go solve it, send me your solutions in the mail, and I'll go vote on it. It doesn't tell you anything about how they worked on it, how they did, give them a chance to collaborate. The concept of the hackathon is they're doing it in situ, right there in place, and you get to see the whole interaction and everything else that goes with it, and perhaps say that, you know what, that person's a star, just how they worked. They may not have solved the problem, but what they did, maybe they helped their fellow man or fellow a friend as they're walking through there and picked them up by the bootstraps. That in itself is a benefit. All right, really quickly. There's a planning workbook, and that's what this is over here. Essentially goes you to the motions of getting a program plan. This is a very, very, let's just say, fixed program with it they're looking at over here. As they say, adjust to your need. We can do these things very quickly, or we can follow a plan and go like really, really rigid through the notes. But for the most part, a lot of everything that happens will follow this kind of flow, even if it's detailed or not. There's going to be a plan for sure. There's going to be a schedule, what needs to be done. Communication plan. You can't do without it. You got to tell people what's going on. You got to set up the event. It is an event after all, so it's got to be set up. And you should always follow things up. There's no point of having something if there's no follow up. All right, straight up. The program plan. So the keys. Planning and logistics, of course, like anything else, the more you plan, the more likely it's to happen. The best laid plans, of course, can mess up, but let's just say more planning does not hurt. Over planning, can you over plan in something like this? Well, you could. It just makes it for a less satisfying result when you over plan. But at the very least, sometimes, as they say, using some of these pieces or at least checking them off to say, I don't need this and here's why. For example, an executive sponsor credibility for the hackathon. Well, I probably need one at least to have that. I want to set dates. Yeah. Okay, that's an obvious. Pick your judges. Maybe there's no judges. Maybe it's going to be peer-to-peer voting. Everyone votes on each other. You can't vote for yourself or whatever, things like that. The idea is you just have to fill that line. What am I going to do about that? Check it off. Choosing in person, and if you're doing in person, of course, there's a lot of logistics that are involved, so you have to definitely plan for that. If you're going to make this a contest or a prize, you want to start thinking about that early. Again, that would be one of those cases where it's optional. Maybe the prize is, hey, you got off work for the last 2 days. Wasn't that incentive enough? Yes, it was. That was great. Or worse, it's like I hate that because now when I go back to work, I got my inbox all piled up. Well, maybe we better give them something to give them an incentive to participate. They suggest setting up a registration mechanism. It really depends on the size of the firm or the group that you're working with. If everyone you know is on the same Teams chat or the same group, it's easier to get a hold of them and to deal with them. Maybe you don't need a form and everything else. But if you want to make it larger for a larger organization, yeah, have a registration mechanism at least of some sort. We'll talk more about that a little bit. And of course, your communication strategy for it. The idea is something like a hackathon should not be in the shadows, a secret hackathon or any of those. If you have one of those, you sort of defeat the purpose. You want to try to get people in. Again, unless it's targeted for a specific group, you want to at least make that communication to that group or to the wider audience that you're trying to attract. All right, here's some workbook keys type stuff. Oh, so here's another thing about this workbook. As you're going through, it'll actually give you stuff in the PowerPoint that you can use as forms for you to fill out. Basically, if you fill out the form, this is how you would do it. You don't have to do it here. You can take that out, put it in Word. You can actually, I don't know, make a Power App for it. How about that? Or do something else. Put it in SharePoint, however you want to do it. But the idea is you're going to see workbook type papers going through here. In this case, here's an example where they give you a nice little format that allows you to put in the executive sponsor, the dates, the scope, and then check off, for example, where things will be hosted. All right, on the scope, and we said, remember earlier, I gave you some of these pre-notions on where the scopes are. They're giving some backgrounds that's saying, hey, if you're doing this kind of hackathon, here are the pros and cons of doing it. All right, and they give you this is great, they gave you some examples of things that you can say, here's the Benny of doing this. So if you want to convince your boss, we want to have a company-wide hackathon, and we believe that if we do this, we will improve our customer experience by come up with your ROI for that. Here's a key for just about any project you do. I think not just for Power Platform, but for anything. It's good to have a metric that says, here, we started with this, and after this was done, we ended up with that. Metrics, something to measure you by. It's a good idea. In fact, they're giving you that example here. So as you can see, there's company-wide you can have, the department-specific, gives you an idea. And they say some of these cons may not be cons necessarily. It's again, this gets weighed on what it is that you're trying to do. Again, upskilling focus is the training focus, right? Where they're saying, we just want to train people. We don't really care that they're solving something. We just want to measure it. But maybe that's all you need. So keep that in mind. I'm glad that they made that slide for this.
All right, another workshopy thing that you get to fill in. In fact, you would put in your own names of people that are in here, but this is a good example of things that you could be using for your particular hackathon. And essentially, if you have something blank over here, you need to put something in there or take it out. It's giving you a note on what an executive sponsor is like. This executive sponsor is the same concept that they have in their adoption and nurture guides and everyone else. In fact, I believe this slide was perhaps stolen from those slides and added to this group. Essentially, how do you find an executive sponsor for a X thing? This is just their example. All right, and of course the so-called subject matter experts, the SMEs, Mr. SMEs. All right, here's the thing about the hackathon. If everyone's a beginner in the hackathon, as they say, the blind leading the blind is absolutely the case. We're all trying this out. We're just hacking. We're just playing around. That's fun. That could be great. You could come up with weird things. But that is time that's going to be consumed with something that may not work or make people frustrated. A key to a hackathon is there needs to be at least one person in there that is of enough expertise to at least be able to answer the questions, or at least with the contact back to Microsoft or someone that can get questions answered, because someone's going to invent something. They're going to go nuts and do something that the licensing cost is going to go crazy, or someone is going to try to do something and they're not sure. I'm not sure if I should do this with Microsoft Access data or SQL data or everything else. At the very least, sometimes it's good to have a little bit of scope added to things by bringing in the expert that has some experience. The key to the hackathons in the beginning is usually you'll be doing it in conjunction with Microsoft. And Microsoft has these programs. In fact, they have ones that are sometimes scheduled for the public to come in at the MTC or the centers that they have in some areas. In other cases, it'll be like partners that'll do it. Partners like my company or other companies will have something like this where they get people going. But for folks that take it afterwards, they will take the experts that they have internally and do it. There are some companies that never even waited for Microsoft to do it because they gained enough expertise within their own organizations. Schlumberger would be a good example there in the blog site showing that they've done all this fantastic stuff. Alan Chai, I think, is the big MVP from that area, where they created their own and they were able to manage it and run it on their own without the help, really, even of Microsoft. Over here, Microsoft will come in and give them logistical support. That's about it. All right. But the idea, of course, is there needs to be somebody who can at least be an advisor or at least a guide. It's almost like when they have the cake show or something, and then they'll have an actual real major top level baker or two that'll be available to help them, ask them, or when Tim Gunn goes around and in Project Runway, and he goes and visits all the different tables and he starts getting them to talk and ask questions or giving them some ideas or tell them, no, I don't know if that's going to work. This is the concept. Maybe that's the best example. Project Runway, Tim Gunn, the SME that's in as part of the call. I bet they didn't think about adding Tim Gunn over here. I'm going to get sued. Let's see. All right. And now, subject matter experts. Look over here on the left. They're saying, perhaps. And I'm going to say perhaps because this is not, I found this is not necessarily to be true. These are the skills that they should have in order to be a SME that could help run a hackathon. I'm going to say, yeah, it helps, but it's not the true thing, because the person that's going to help is not just the smarts to be able to pass the PL200 test, but also, let's just say, the personality to be the Tim and the helpful person to actually get stuff done. Because if you're going to have the last person you want to have visiting you every time is Simon Cowell, that sort of person who's always going to tell you, oh, that sucks. Oh, I can't take that. Oh, you should not do that. That's not the person you want. You want a person with skill and with personality. That's the only thing missing from this one. I think they should add to the slide. Personality. If there's a personality certification, they should have it. All right. Now, the use cases. There's two things. Remember, I said the hackathon. Sometimes a hackathon, and this is what we've seen from experience. We've seen hackathons where they say, we don't want to spend all that time trying to come up with what they're going to build. Because, yeah, that can take time. In fact, that can take a whole day, where everyone just fights it out, comes up with different ideas, and they're all just going through in a sign-up form or any other cases, and they're coming up with different use cases, and some of these use cases clearly can't ever be done. No way that can be done in a quote-unquote hackathon period. What you're looking at is a big, huge problem, or they're coming up with something so simple they can do it in 5 minutes, in the tutorial from a plural site. Why would they want to do that? So I've seen hackathons wherein they've had those where they're coming up with the ideas. That's a different kind of hackathon. And I'll tell you right now, sometimes it will take a whole day to make that happen. Most of the time, these are figured out sooner. So if we're doing, say, different groups, the different groups will submit their ideas ahead of time. And ahead of time, there is a decision, an executive decision made by the folks that are going to be running it, the event organizers, along with SMEs and everything else, to say, yes, this is suitable for a hackathon in the time frame with the expertise that you have on hand and with the licenses that you're allowed to even have. Right? That kind of
Ralph,
thing is to do it. Yes, go ahead.
I have to run, so
you're going to run.
bail out. Yep.
All right, Mr. Bale. If anyone else can watch the chat, and feel free to come off chat and let me know if there's any questions I need to answer. I will go ahead and do it. All right.
All right.
Meanwhile,
cool. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Bye.
Meanwhile, there's some links over here where they're showing case studies over here, the app patterns and architecture samples. Those are, again, just links that really don't help you with the planning of the hackathon. But for the folks that are trying to determine the use case and stuff, it's just giving you some examples. Let's just say if you have the right SME, they're not going to need this information. They're going to pretty much know what that is inherently. Other things that are part of the planning, it's like finding out what connectors and everything else that they need. In a lot of cases, the organization policies will apply. I'd like to have a hackathon. Well, we're not allowed to use Dataverse at all. And I've seen this quite a few times, period, because we don't want to take premium. All right. Then the person says, well, I'm going to do it with SQL then. And then they say yes to that. And I'm like, dudes, did you realize that SQL is also a premium connector? And you didn't want to use Dataverse. Why? What's going on? All right. And then oh, we're not allowed to use that either. It's too late. We've already had this in mind. We brought in our data guy and all that. Oh no. You want to have all these stuff planned ahead of time of what's allowed and what's not. If your organization does not have a DLP policy going on because they didn't do the COE thingy with where they had to figure that out, or just everything is out in the open, it's the wild, wild west, this is something to consider before having the hackathon. If the policy is it's the wild, wild west, no matter what happens, hackathon or not, no problem. Unlikely, more likely the case of everything's locked down. You can't have anything. You can't have nice things. All right, time to work out with IT. Some nice things that are going to be beneficial to them and that they may be able to manage and maintain to their limit. And that could mean that the hackathon itself, the environment set up for the hackathon might be specific environments. In fact, the hackathon might say, all right, you can do whatever you want, but you can only use these connectors. Good luck. Boom, go. All right, judging criteria. Again, we're, as I say, always judging. If there has to be judging, having a criteria. Here's the thing: if there's going to be judging, you want to make those criteria sample. If it's the case of they may not like you, judging criteria, well, who's going to want to participate in that? Being transparent with the criteria, by the way, to the folks that are out there is always a good thing, I think, for anything else. And they're giving some ideas on what kind of criteria you can use. And of course, if there has to be a winner and loser, I like this. This is some quick criteria on how the winner will be determined. Again, this is just some suggestions and some examples. They're not telling you do it by this way. They're telling you these are the examples. So here's an example. So it gives you points. Points are the fastest way. And the more metricy you make it, the more objective versus subjective it is. Usually the better, because then people think you're fairer than, say, the case of like, he's saying that because he's a friend, whatever. Well, okay. How about if we say this? This is how we're scoring. This is just an example. I like the way they put this example where the business points of getting something done, it has more weight than the technical points. The technical points means, well, yeah, okay, so you went out of your way to use components that have variables that are set up with your naming conventions, all beautiful. You know what? That really doesn't matter. Did you solve the business problem? No? Okay. You're not happening because you're solving the business area. If the design is good, maybe the design is a bit better than the technical. This is just an example. It doesn't have to be this way. Maybe it is more important because, say, you're trying to find your best of the developers who are hacking. So now technical points go up. How they did it technically, their design ideas, whether they solved the business problem wasn't so important. I wanted to find out who was the best at building the most coolest technical solution. That could be the case. But actually, I like this one better because it is exactly how we like to do our hackathons, which is focus on what business problem is being solved. All right, and so over here, there's a worksheet, and it's how you'd basically fill in your criteria. All right, now, the other thing is like when there's teams. Remember I said 5 people and everyone their own individual, maybe lone wolf items. Hackathons are not helped. Then it becomes a contest. Then it becomes like a test or something else. Not the same. A hackathon really is about the collaboration. There are going to be groups and teams, and it could be the case where like the teams are created right there on the spot. Typically, though, I will tell you that the teams are usually predetermined. In all the hackathons that I've had where people are paying money to bring in groups together, they want this stuff known ahead of time. They're not going to go in there and expect that people are going to like draw from the hat and it's like your house Gryffindor, your house Ravenclaw, whatever. They're not going to expect the magic hat to tell them where people are going to be or any of that. They want to know exactly ahead of time. And it's actually a good idea because a lot of this ceremony, and that's really what it is, ceremony of picking what to do and everything else, takes time. You got the time? Great. You don't, mitigate that in the planning. All right. So that's what this is over here about essentially figuring that out. Also, I'll give you a rule of thumb. You remember I said the SME that's going to help out people in the hackathon? Here's a rule of thumb. If there's at least 15 people involved, that involves at least one person that can help, say, go back and forth and give assistance to those 15 people. If you make more than that, you're going to need another person for it. So I have the rule of 15 or 10 to 15. One person for every 10 to 15 people in the group. This actually works for in-a-day courses as well, where you need proctors and everything else. If you're making teams that are huge, right? So there's 5 people teams and there's like 10 teams. Well, for heaven's sakes, the one SME is not going to be able to help everyone. You're going to need more. All right. And just if you think of that math, 10 to 15 against the number of people, that's the math that you should be concerned with. All right. They're giving you some examples with some cool registration forms over here. All right, and there's the example. In fact, when you click on these links in the workbook over here, it'll show you these forms, and you can click on that. I want to copy this form and I want to use it. It's great. It's got all the text and everything you need in it right away. Add it to your site, and you are ready to go. All right. And there's ground rules. Yep, this is the place to put it. They just say bring in any other ground rules. Ground rules like could be like you can't use this. You can't say your name while you're talking about your stuff. Whatever your ground rules, whatever as they say fits for it. Go ahead and put it. Optional. Okay, so sometimes what they do for hackathons, and by the way, this has happened for me now 2 or 3 times actually. Twice for sure. The third time I wasn't a participant in, where it was usually involved with app in a day or one of those in a days before things started, or part of a conference where someone says, "Hey, here's stuff that we did. We did this and we figured this out ourselves," and basically gets everyone inspired. So the idea is like it's part of a bigger event. So we're going to have a hackathon, we're going to play with it, but part of the bigger event is maybe people showcasing what they've done, maybe people actually taking training so they can get ready, so they can actually get to do it and they're fresh with the latest knowledge for stuff that's going on. So optionally, if you're going to make a hackathon work, it's probably a good idea to have that particular case. Hey, this is me talking that's going to be helping out folks that are in there, giving them say the venue to tell them what they do, what they've done, how they've come up with stuff, how they solve problems. In itself could be something that could be added. All right, other fun activities. I think this one's straightforward. Again, you're having an event. Is it in person? Having music, food teams, and everything else. I got to go fix these fonts over here. This is the I like this one over here. The our Power Champs. Oh, let me go click that link. I want to see what that happens here. I'm going to click that one here and see where that goes. I haven't seen this one. aka.ms/Power Apps Champs. What does that go? Oh, of course. Yes, and by the way, this is a bit old, October 4 from this year. So they're showing some champs that are out there that have been recognized, and I don't think all of these are. I see a few potential. Like I know Azure became an MVP. She's one of my favorites. Let's see, oh, Keith, yeah. So this is just an example of champions and saying what they did and everything else. Very, very neat that they show this piece of information right over here. All right. So otherwise, you can have music, foods, swag, everything else that goes with. All right. Rewards and recognition. Again, assuming that that is something that you would do for your hackathon, here's a little worksheet of what it is and when you actually give that particular item. It's giving you here some sample rewards. Lunch with a key sponsor, a thank you mail, a gift card, licenses. So yeah, you get yourself a full Power Apps license with Dataverse and everything else. It means you can go crazy. In other words, it's almost like in the old days in the 50s when the husbands used to give their wives like a vacuum cleaner for their gift, thinking that they were doing something good. And no, that is misogynistic as heck, but that is almost what that sounds like. Hey, you like working here, let me give you stuff so you can do more work for us. Yes, why not? I would say, how about give them something better than that? All right, but anyways, they do believe that their license in itself might be an incentive. That's the reason for that. All right, program schedule. Some of these we're going to go through a little bit faster now. Hackathons can take days or it can take a single day. I'll tell you right now, half my hackathons have been single day events. You start in the morning, whatever they came up with in the end of the day, and whatever it was a done deal. The other half have been multi-day events. And frankly, they've been 3 to 4 day events. Plus one day where we started off with like the in-a-day trainings. So day one was like Power Apps in a day / Power Dashboard in a day. Sometimes in the morning, apps in a day, cut in half. Dashboard in a day, cut in half. Or just pure apps in a day. We're just doing apps and everything else, and maybe augmented with some RPA or something like that. And then the rest of it is actually the hackathon, where they go through multiple days of actually building something. And when we say a day, it doesn't mean they're spending 8 hours at it. In fact, I will give you my experience of that. Best, because basically people get burnt out if you try to do an 8-hour day. 6 hours max, 4 hours, 3 to 4 hours optimum. So half a day at a time so they can get back to the regular jobs. If this is an in-person event and it's happening at a place and everyone's having fun, people are going, to the hotel afterwards, yeah, you can take most of the day, but don't. Have a lot of breaks, have a lot of time, have a lot of stuff in between, and break it up. All right. So the one-day event, essentially, you're trying to produce something basic. It's essentially means that you're in the case of the one-day events, though, it's expected that they have training to begin with. They actually either they're coming in people that already know what they're doing, or they have attended already an in a day and they can show that they have attended it. And by the way, recently, not one like a year ago, they attended the in a day and now they're going into a one-day event. It's not going to be like as satisfying or effective, frankly. So one-day events, not so cool. Again, in most of the cases, it's because they're already prepared and ready to go. 3-day events are the more likely. All right, best for upskilling and the dedicated first day for training. That's what they say over there in the 3-day event. Frankly, it's 3 days of hackathon, 1-day training. So I'm going to give the Ralph experience in that, wherein it should be 4. The month-long event. I have not seen one of these. Kickoff day, and then they're basically working every day, and maybe a few hours they're doing something. Good luck trying to manage such a thing. It's like, how do you know what's going on over here? You literally have to have infrastructure city to be able to manage how this goes, because this is like work while you're work at the same time on top of having the contest and everything else. You might as well like say just mail it in. Is my thought on this one over here. Now, a month-long event could be doable, and in fact, they're giving you the formula to how to do this. I will tell you, I have not seen this, and I have heard about it that's being proposed. We're like, hey, we can spread it out over a month, and I think I know why, because of this particular document. And people said, clients and everyone else was like, no, we don't think so, because here's the thing. Here's the thing about a month-long event. How long before we see an output or something that we can win with? A month? Nobody likes to wait a month. They can wait a week or a few days or one day. No one's going to wait a month. Well, or no, maybe somebody will. Some people are very patient, but maybe not everybody. Just saying. All right, it's giving you some samples. on what happens. Here's just a sample schedule, but I think it's not so important that this particular schedule is being shown, is the fact that you're going to have a schedule. You're going to have a date, a time, and what activities are happening. And sometimes the activity is like hack, 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 and then maybe, closing ceremonies, demo. Drop-in times, teams check-ins. I want to make this quite clear over here. One of the things that we found out a lot in the case of hackathons is like, well, we don't seem to have the license. I can't log in. I can't do this. All these little technical issues. Frankly, I have no place inside of a hackathon. If they're coming to the Microsoft Center and they're using like the accounts that they gave them, they should have no problem. But if they're going to be using their organizational resources and they're going to think that they can do whatever they need, we have to do tech checks. We have to make sure all that stuff is taken care of. So there's check-in that needs to be done. The check-in is a case of like, do you have everything you need? And I'm going to say this check-in is not just on the day, but the check-ins and teams check-ins like the week before to make it part of it. All right, want to make sure that there's no blockers. The last thing you need is any blockers. Blockers in the day is the worst thing. That basically says that your planning missed. All right, communication plans is the key. Letting people know what's going to happen. Don't tell them a week ahead of time that the hackathon's next week. The further out it is, the better. You want folks to be engaged, to really want to do it as much as possible. That's all great and well, but the communication is probably the most important thing, especially the part about saying, hey, before you come in, make sure your dev plan is up and running so you can do whatever you want. I can't tell you how many times that even no matter how much times we said that, on the day we're actually there, yeah, I don't have my own environment. I'm setting one up right now. Oh my God. Then they're waiting 2-3 hours for Microsoft to spin up their dev plan. And like, it sometimes takes hours. It could take minutes, but you just came at a bad time. We tell you in the email last week to put it in and to call us or come to the session before it. This has happened more often than not. I'm sad to say. Okay. Here's a sample communication plan event. And look at this. Wow, 8 weeks ahead of time. Well, yeah, sure. Why not? We can go that far out for putting folks together. In some cases, that's what you need. Some organizations are so busy. You do have to do 8 weeks. But this is a good idea when you look at the cadence of how things are going on. Let's just say planning for any mid-sized organization just to make it happen or larger. There's a lot of communication that has to take place ahead of time, well before things happen. If you're just doing it for your group, that's one thing. But if you're doing it any larger, this truly is the pattern to happen. It's giving you a sample email plan. Essentially, what they're saying is just the communication plan should itself have its own worksheet, and there it is. And they give you some templates. So they're giving you some links to download these templates. They're pretty cool. We're almost done here. Event setup. All right, logistics. I mean, the obvious is their swags, gifts. If there's a venue, that seems obvious enough. Getting registration, no problem. The content for things, well, the environments is the big one. See this over here? Set up environments for participants to hack it. What do we mean by that? In Power Platform, there are environments specifically. You get to set those up. That's not cheap. If you're doing it in your environment, someone's got to pay for that. It's going to be a license. It's going to be something. Maybe they're dev plans that they're going to be working in. All right, fine. They're dev plans. Everyone has to have that set up and have that ready. The company that or organization that you're doing has to allow said dev plan. Or maybe they're using a dev tenant to get that set up. Well, that's got to be set up. And remember, dev tenants only have 25 user capacity at best. Maybe Microsoft sets it up for you. A partner sets it up for you. Whatever happens, they need to be ready and they need to be tested and working and confirmed beforehand. And of course, the communications. If IT is not involved with any of this stuff, it's only because it's happening outside of the organization. But otherwise, they have to be part of it. All right. It's suggesting in the case of even if it's actually live, to have teams involved. And why? Why would we have teams? Teams to maintain files, to maintain information, and sometimes remember, Teams itself is a way to deliver an MVP or content. I'm going to create something. Hey, if we use Teams, we can host the app itself. We can do the flow. We can do the Power Bot, the Power Virtual Agents bot, or any of that piece. Having the teams available to make that happen is great. Before the event starts, having a team to collaborate, to talk, pardon me, to do all that stuff is great. So again, even if they're live, they can communicate and use that as the place to keep stuff. All right. But otherwise, if they're remote, it's a must to have something like Teams to go through. Sometimes you can use breakout rooms. And in fact, one of the big hackathons we did use breakout rooms where like the different teams working on stuff were on breakouts, as opposed to channels, because that's the other common other possibility. Teams and then channel one, channel two, team two. They're different. It's how they work out. The concept of breakout is you can pull people in, pull people out, pull people in, pull people out. Channels are independent. Go work. The two ways of doing it. All right. Readiness. Readiness. How do we get ready? In a lot of the cases, readiness usually means some sort of training. You don't have a hackathon with citizen devs who have never ever done a form or a workflow or anything else at all. There's got to be at least some readiness for the folks that are happening. And typically it is the training sessions. The in-a-day sessions are the most common, easiest to get, and stuff that you could host on your own if you wanted to by getting the material, but more appropriately done through a partner or through Microsoft or through the freebie that they give every so often. There are in-a-days going on all the time. And if you haven't gotten the mail lately that said, hey, would you like to participate in an in-a-day meeting? Yeah, I do this all the time, every day. You know what? Attend them anyway, or just get to them, because you never know. They might show you something new.
Mhm.
All right. And the idea, again, is to be ready. And how do you tell if they're ready? Well, some people say, well, maybe they take the certification test and then they can come. Well, that's too high a bar. Take it down somewhere. Did you attend? Yes or no? Just take their word for it, really. You don't have to go that far. It is a hackathon. If there's contests involved, then remember, you just remind them that they're only hurting themselves if they did not train, and now they're going to come over to the contest where the other gladiators will have them for lunch. Speaking of gladiators, other technical readiness, things that are needed over here. On the IT side, on the folks that are preparing side, sometimes it's trial environments. Useful. Trial environments are okay. Dataverse for Teams environments. Yes, you can do those. I want to note that they put those two things in there. Here's the big issue with that. And of course, the most important, the developer plan. By the way, 9 out of 10 times, the developer plan has been the weapon of choice for people to be able to do that kind of work. But all of these have an issue. They're limited. So if they're trying to do anything fancy, remember limitations, 2 gig of space and all that stuff. It's like, in a hackathon, how much are they going to do that's going to kill the system? You're right, right? So I can do something. And anyway, I'm not going to be hitting 5,000 API calls during the hackathon. I'm not going to be creating a data piece that's more than 2 gigabytes big and everything else, unless, of course, I am, I don't know, maybe, oops, I'm sorry, let me go back. Maybe I'm creating something where we're doing video production. It's like, oh shoot, all right, you did need that space. Maybe we did need to give you more space for that stuff to happen. But for the most part, keep in mind that these are great for the hackathons and great for things that are going on, but they have limitations. All right, so if somebody says, oh, I created my output from the hackathon is not working anymore, we went over to production. Well, duh, you left it in your trial environment or your dev plan or your Dataverse for Teams, and no, it's not going to happen. The other one, of course, I talked about this earlier, the DLP policies. This should be really, especially if a company is very picky and persnickety about what they use for connectors and everything else, that needs to be in play as part of the hackathon. It needs to be part of it and ready to go. Other things, of course, necessary licenses and everything else. If they're not using the developer plan, which basically allows for them to do whatever they want, if they're doing things in a regular environment, they're going to need to have the proper permissions to do what it is that they got to do. All right. Any data sources? Maybe, for example, they're all working with ServiceNow. Hey, it's a customer service group, and they're all working with the ServiceNow. They should have a connection to that so they can use their data or give them alternative data. All of these things. Oh yeah. So we've had the case where we've had to set up dummy data for one of the hackathon groups. That is very labor intensive and should not be cheap. right? If you're charging for it, yeah, charge for that time to create that dummy data. Better to access the real data, better to access the real fake data or wherever it is they can get it, but make sure that that's available. They're talking about saying teams and Dataverse for the hackathon team is one of the common ones. They said you can't read this over here. Unfortunately, I think the white did not come over here. In this particular the tip of considering teams to use with Dataverse for teams. Here's the one issue. When you're actually doing development in teams, the user maker in experience is different than make.powerapps.com, for example. It is different. And some things it doesn't seem to let you do as easily. So I'm going to warn you right now, try to avoid that. You're better off doing it with make Power Apps or make that Power Automate wherever possible and not do it in teams. If you do it in teams and they get used to it, they're all fine and well. And maybe that's the goal is for them to get used to it, doing it that way. That's fine and well, but that better be the goal because if it's not, if you're trying to make real apps, you're trying to let people learn how to do it for real. You're not saving any money or saving any license by doing it that way. In fact, you're sort of hobbling yourself. All right. The developer plan, of course, is the case of the developer plan. Only the developer can use it. When you're working together and collaborating, that the case of the developer plan where folks are using it, we had the ideas where they save whatever they did as a zip and then upload it into a common area and other people got to work on it from that area. That was how that worked. All right, again, just listing your activities to set up. Project submissions. All right, so somebody wants to participate. Someone says, hey, I want to actually do something. Here's my team and everything else. They're just giving some examples and templates to use. An award ceremony. Okay. Yeah, doesn't have to be this simple over here with just some folks around the desk, but they're giving the idea. Here's the thing, though. Encourage teams to show a live demo. That second one, that one is key. Presenting the solutions. This is the point of the hackathon. You just don't build something and go home. Hey, how did my stuff do? We're done. No, you don't have to do winners or losers necessarily at the end. You do want to have a celebration. You want to have something to recognize the fact that they took the time to do it. And you do want to have that presentation. I think that's key. Somebody does something, they need to be able to present it. Finally, as the post event, don't stop at the hackathon. What happens? What happens in Vegas should not stay in Vegas. Essentially, take Vegas out of there. Essentially, once you get folks going, there should be some sort of follow-up. It could be a survey that says, what do you think of the hackathon? How did we do? And all that stuff. The survey, they have lots of those. Pulse survey as an example. But the idea is to really, really follow through with things going forward. Get that metric. Before we did this, we made these many apps. After the hackathon, suddenly these many apps showed up in the environment. You want to see that people who went to the hackathon are actually using what it is that they hacked or played around with, and not necessarily the apps necessarily, but the skills or the fact that they use the licenses to do something new. So that's the idea over here. There's short term, which is the quick, here's some things you can do for folks right away, links to your solutions, other reward announcements, everything else. And then afterwards, just follow through. In fact, follow through potentially with more hackathons 6 months later, a year later. All right, and of course, here's Microsoft's slide that says, hey, we're here to help you. They come with an appendix of things you can use. Basically, an idea of like, hey, what solution are you doing? Who will use it? Basically, to help you get ROI and business value. All right, and some of the other information that people usually want as part of a development thing. That's just giving you a form. All right. Hey, and I got through it before the 7 o'clock hour. How about it?
Nice.
All right, what do we got here? Next steps for the Power Platform journeys, just the links, of course, to follow through. Just tell a friend, more user group information over here. But otherwise, go ahead. Earlier, we had those links to the Hackathon book and everything else on how to do it. I'm open to any questions of any kind, literally right now, while you have me. You can ask me just about anything other than my bank account. That will not happen. Not today.
Yeah, the setup is it's a bit intimidating.
It is.
Be very difficult for one person to even like one person and a sponsor
Yes.
to
This is a good feedback. So, as you kept seeing, one of the common things that they say in Power Platform everywhere across the board is the concept of the team. And we talk about this sometimes when we do admin and my admin in an hour talk, and they say,
Mhm.
"What is a Power Platform admin?" And Microsoft's definition is a admin is a team that. Oh, hold a second. I'm asking you what the admin is. Yeah, and I said it's the team that. Well, why are you telling me about a team when I ask you about the admin? Because their point is that you shouldn't be. No one should be doing this alone. There should be
Mhm.
a backup. There should be more people that are involved. In fact, these things are more successful when you have buy-in from beyond a couple of people, right? So a couple of people might be like gung ho and ready to go and make it all happen. Not everyone can be an Alan Chai and like drive everything. They usually though are charismatic at least enough to bring in others to their side to join in the group. This is why hackathons typically are not done by the individuals to make things happen. They will contact the Microsoft team and say, "Hey, Microsoft, we want to have a hackathon for
Mhm.
Power Platform. What can you do for us?" And Microsoft will say, "Let's look at your company. Oh my gosh, we'll actually host it for you at the MTC, or we have a partner that can do it for you for no cost, if as long as you promise to have 30 people show up, for
Nice.
example. They might do something like that for you. In other words, take advantage of your Microsoft contacts wherever possible. If your developer lead or the folks above have usually just any EA agreement with Microsoft, to any size, there's usually a Microsoft person involved somewhere that is looking forward to adoption of Power Platform. And the easiest thing is in-a-days and hackathons for them. It doesn't cost them much to make those happen. It really it doesn't. In a lot of cases, especially because they're going to be using the facilities that the client has on their own, or
Mhm.
the users have on their own, or they will be like piggybacking on an existing hackathon that's going on already somewhere, right? And so between those, they can make that happen for you. For an individual wanting to do this themselves, it would, even if they have the buy-in, they have to the person buying in from their stakeholders will have to be told, I need 5 people to help me with this. Why so many people? Because I need, and remember the roles that we showed over there, show them
Yeah.
the roles. We need a person to do this, a person to do that, or a person to at least be responsible or own this. I want someone to own the communication. I want someone to own the setup. I want someone to own this, because if it's the same person, it's going to be very complicated and it's going to be very messy, and we may not ever do it again because it's going to be the worst experience. We want to do this again. And the more people that are participating, maybe next time different roles, you can switch people around. The idea is you want to make it a cadence. Hackathons, I think, should be a cadence for anybody, like on a 6 to a month to an annual basis. It's a good idea to have those if you really want to keep on the Power Platform adoption maturity scale and go up the
Mhm.
scale. More hackathons, good for that score.
Nice. Thank you.
Oh, sure. And like I said, don't be intimidated by it so much, because remember, it's the case of when there's people that are doing it, it's no problem. It's just a case of when you're doing it, you're dealing with a lot of people. Um, it's in their particular case, it's to their benefit. They're learning it. If you're not the SME to make it happen, bring one in. Find an MVP or find someone in the area, or tell
Mhm.
Microsoft, I need someone from your office to sit here and be our SME. Microsoft usually has people in their local offices available for that, and that's usually a no cost.
Nice. That's good to know. As far as setup, there are times when I have attempted to learn things through the
Yes.
Microsoft Learn website,
Yes.
and there seems to be something, I think it's called like a module, where
Yes.
you're like in a port of some kind.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you don't really have to do much setup out of that. You can just do whatever they're wanting you to do within that.
Yes.
Are there hackathons that are like that?
No, usually the hackathons, you want to have the full power of the environment somewhere, either through a dev tenant, the dev plan, or one of those where you can pretty much do what you need to do. Hackathon essentially is not the case of like, I have a problem, and it's an exact problem. You need to
Mm,
use Power Apps with a collection that talks to a data, and it talks to it in like async fashion, and it's like a very specific problem, like a code war sort of thing. That's not a
okay.
hackathon anymore. That's more of a challenge. A challenge-a-thon, I guess. That's the hackathon is the idea of the hackathon is you have an open idea. I want to make the HR onboarding better. All right, now hack it. All right, what am I going to do? I'm going to have a form for people to fill out. I'm going to have a connection to the HR database to enter their data, which is going to connect to the Outlook database to create their email account, to create their regular account, blah, blah, blah. There's an example of somebody hacking a solution for a problem, as opposed to specifically use this and that and this to make that happen. When you do the learn modules, they're very specific. You're solving this, you're trying to learn this. It's not like choose your adventure. It's a specific way of going, right? The hackathon is choose your adventure. All right. I didn't have to use an app to do this. I could have done this with a Microsoft form that kicked off a place. I could have started with a SharePoint list form and kicked off the same thing. I could have started from talking to a bot in Teams, give me blah. That could have been a form that said, give me blah, what blah do you want? Or a bot that, and I said, give me blah, and the bot responded, and then go ahead and kicked off the flow. You see what I'm saying? It's like if you were trying to do that and learn, that'd be like 5-10 pages of learn just to do one thing. Learn wants to focus you on learning something in a module, as opposed to like, here's 20 ways you can do the same thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
That helps? All right.
Yes, very much so.
It's a very good question, though.
Thank you.
All right. You had the best questions today, so you're going to help everyone out there who's listening in. All righty. Yes, go ahead.
I do have a question about future meetings.
Yes.
And so is there a new link created for every meeting? Like if I'm
Did I
not
lose you?
coming in through Teams? Or is it always at the same?
Raquel,
Yep.
are you still there? My connection died. Hold on a second. What the heck happened to my connection? Oh, I'm sorry, I lost my connection. Are you still there? Hello? Can you hear me?
I think she has gone. I only see one other guest in here.
Oh, it knocked out?
I think so. I'm not sure if she's able to
My
rejoin.
my vocals just went out completely too. Oh, okay. Diana can hear me. Diana, your voice got cut off. I think we got a network problem.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Because today I just happened to have my phone and my Teams was on. And so in the future, is the link for this meeting always the same, or does it change with every meeting?
So very good question. This particular meeting is a recurring meeting, so the link is the same.
Okay, good to know.
All right. It just happens to be that way right now. It might change, but for now, consider this to be the same link on the monthly basis. In fact, there's one probably scheduled for next month, which we're not going to have. So if you show up, you'll be by yourself.
Oh, good to know.
Okay. All right. I think, was that the last question then?
Yes, it is.
All righty. Thank you so much. I'll let you, it's a past dinner time for us now, so we'll get back to it. I'm not sure if Hal's still there. Hal must have dropped off earlier. Raquel, you can sign us out on the streaming.